The news came through this morning, and you actually were on top of this. You predicted this, I have to say, spinning your blushes, but I suppose it's nothing you're proud of, because the news isn't particularly good if you're a Derby County fan. Another 9-point deduction, 3 of those points suspended, 21 points in total. I think we can now say, and sorry Derby fans out there, we're talking about Derby County, League One club next season.
Yeah, but people would have thought they weren't going to get both sanctions. They got a sanction for going into administration. That's a given. They might have argued about getting some of it suspended because of COVID conditions, but they wouldn't have got away with it. And there's no defence to the fact they've been found guilty of the accountancy principles that Mel wanted to advance were legitimate, and the Football League have won on appeal and decided that they're not. So there's never going to be any goodwill. There's never going to be, okay, well, we feel a bit sorry for you. We're not going to give you a sanction that we'll give to everybody else. They've got the sanctions that their behaviour has dictated. They were always going to be a League One club, even with the 12-point penalty, in my view. They are... The administrator, I think, if he's got any sense about him, and I know that Andy Hoskins does, would be selling it as a League One going concern. And so now, 21 points, what are they, minus 16 now, something like that? Then, it's a given that they're going to get relegated.
It's certainly a given now. I mean, it's become much more definite now.
I would have thought even with 12 points they'd have got relegated. But it's very difficult to debate that they won't get relegated with 21. And it was silly people that were suggesting they weren't going to get both sanctions, because they were, and they have. And whilst it's whilst it's unfortunate and tragic for the supporters of Derby, it is the byproduct of other people's actions. Everything we see, whether it's Roger Hutton sitting in front of a committee, is the byproduct of people's actions. If you don't run your business properly, you're going to get situations that manifest themselves. If you don't run your football club in a line with the keeping of the rules and the finances, as I have found out myself, then there's a consequence to it. Now, Derby are taking one step back to take 2 steps forward. Mel Morris did his very best and cost himself hundreds of millions of pounds, and I'm sure there'll be many Derby fans that want to vilify him and put an effigy up and stick as many things as they can into it. But he didn't set out to lose 200 million quid. He didn't set out to put himself in a position where he can be vilified by those whose club he's funded for years. He set out to try and achieve something. He did some silly things. I mean, I sat here with you 3 years ago, debating with Mel that his revaluing of the stadium was nothing but cute. When the amortisation, the valuation of players come up, I said, that's lovely that you want to value them that way, but the rules don't provide for it. If you want to change the rules, put forward a case of changing the rules. But you can't just unilaterally decide that you want to value your players differently because it suits your agenda. Bottom line is, Derby are in the hands of a solid administrator. They're going to come out
who had been contesting the 12-point deduction,
because it's good form to do so. If it costs very little money, you might as well rattle that sabre and see if the Football League have got an appetite to do anything different. There was never a chance, but you could ask. You could say mitigating circumstances. For going into administration, 12 points is what you get. They were arguing that we should get something less because of COVID and the landscape that COVID created. And the Football League have said, no, you don't get any dispensation for that. They could argue that there's some dispensation for the 9 points that resulted as a result of financial breaches around accountancy, and the Football League have decided not. I didn't think they were ever going to decide that way, but the administrator's job is, if you ask a question and you get a different answer, you started without it, so you might as well ask the question, because you've got nothing to lose. Right?
Correct me if I'm wrong, Simon, but presumably it's easier to find a buyer for a League One club than it is for a club at the top of the Championship or whatever.
Why? Because the same debts are the same debts. We know that the debts are what they are. So the player debts, the debts to transfer fees, the debts to HMRC, all the debts that have forced the club into administration haven't magically disappeared because you went into administration. Some of them have been reduced to the unsecured creditors, but the principal debts that are valuing the club at a certain price that take it out of administration will pretty much stay the same.
But now we know they're going to be in League One, and they are.
Then they get less money. They get less
but
TV
is it
money.
a more or less attractive
it's less, isn't it?
proposition for a buyer?
Well, of course it's less. Because you'd rather have a Championship club than a League One club, wouldn't you? Because you've got to go for the rigmarole of trying to get out of a really difficult division with less TV money. So when you come with £4 or £5 million a year less in your revenue streams from being in League One than you have in the Championship. Now, you'll cut your cloth accordingly, but if you're a new owner, you're trying to get out of the League One, you're going to spend money on players or try to acquire a group of players that can stand in between the League One and the Championship, because what you don't want to do is do a wholesale change for League One and then do a wholesale change for Championship. You'd like to buy players that can do jobs in both. So, of course, any buyer would much prefer to buy the club in the Championship. Because their ambitions of coming into Derby is surely to put them back into the Premier League. So any step away from that is going to be a disadvantage. The administrator is going to sell the club with the best interests of the going concern, which is the club going forward, and the current debts. And we know what the current debts are. We've already been told. We know that to take Derby out of administration and also to get hold of the stadium, which Mel Morris is facilitating, is about 50 million quid. That's not going to change if they get into the League One.
So the whole deal, Derby's going to cost me 50 million if I want it this lunchtime.
Unless the administrator is capable of getting a bidding war between two purchasers that will give the creditors more money.
Well, the last we heard that's the direction it was going in.
But the
Kirchner's still in there, and so is
the bidding
another party.
war is for the birds. People aren't going to sit there and bid against it because they're buying a distressed asset. They're going to find a price and be facilitatory in finding the administrator giving them the keys to the door. We will emphasise that we have the best interests of the club going forward. Here's our commitment. Here's our funding stream. Here's our intellectual capital behind knowing what we're doing. I don't think you're going to see people go, I'll bid 55 million. I'll bid 60. I don't think you're going to see that happen because whilst that's ideal for the creditors to hear, and the HMRC might want to hear that, the reality is that you're not going to hear it. You're going to hear the best bidder come out and who's able to deliver and isn't a tyre kicker, because you're still going to have tyre kickers in there. And Andy Hoskins' job, is to get rid of the tyre kickers, which he probably has done already.
I take it you have sympathy with Mel Morris
because
you know what he was up against, because you ended up being up against a similar type of problem.
Sure. Mine was at a different time when the banking crisis kicked in. Mel's was during COVID. Mel's got more money than me. I was doing it on my own. Mel was doing it on his own. So there's symmetry there. I didn't run away. I should have run away. I'm not suggesting Mel run away, but he's the one that made the decision. I didn't make the decision to put Palace into administration. I fought to the very last minute to try and fight a very aggressive creditor that in the end didn't get his money from Parish. Work out why that happened, I don't know.
Did you not even secure another loan?
I did
I
did lots of things, but a trip down Amnesia Lane, I secured a whole refinancing package through Lloyds, but people that wanted to buy the football club didn't want that financing package to happen. That's a different story. The comparison between me and Mel is we both tried to do our very best. I didn't try to buck the system. I tried to be effective in the system. I tried to make changes. I made changes. I changed the whole landscape of financing outside of the Premier League because you weren't allowed to borrow money from anywhere else other than the high street banks. And given the high street banks in 2009 were closed because the clue was in a banking crisis, you needed to be able to find funding from somewhere else. I changed the rules with Brian Mulwiney to accept third-party funding. Unfortunately for me, that didn't work out the way I wanted it to, because the people that I got third-party funding from were a complete and utter waste of time and didn't deliver the deal that I'd been waiting for 6 months and stuck another 10 million into Palace to get. But the thing with Mel is that Mel's walked away. And I understand why, because you don't leave yourself open to it. I wanted to fight it, so I left myself open to all of the adversity that come afterwards. And that's that's why I get very cross when I hear weak people talking about their responsibility and abdicating responsibility and sitting in front of select committees blaming everybody else. It gets right on my whatevers.
I know it
because
does.
it's about having the courage of your convictions and meaning what you say. But there we are.
Mel's walking. Do you think Wayne will follow him?
I don't know. I think from what I've understood that there's a lot of regard from the American ownership model that believe that the American football pyramid is beginning to kick off. And Rooney was in America, and he's got some icon status. Same as Steven Gerrard's got icon status. The same that Beckham's got icon status over there. And I think there's a feeling, if the American guys buy it, that Rooney would form an integral part of the success that Derby might have in marketing themselves around the world as these people buy this business.
It's a League One club.
Well, if Kirchner gets the deal, he's got money to burn.
Yeah.
And he's got money to burn. And we've seen it happen before. We've seen Fayad catapult Fulham out of the lower echelons of the Football League into the top of the Premier League and then around the mid-table Premier League for years and years and years. So it's not beyond the gift of man. And Derby, with respect to Fulham, is a bigger club than Fulham. 27,000 fans average at Derby while stinking the place out.
Yeah.
That's a fan base, by the way.
If he's got money to burn, he's going into the right industry, isn't he?
Yeah. How do you make a small fortune in football? Start with a big one. Absolutely.
Jim White and Simon Jordan, Monday to Thursday morning 10 till 1 on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.